Hello, and welcome to the third annual State of Cybersecurity Summit, where we'll be looking at critical aspects of cybersecurity in the healthcare setting. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Lisa Gallagher, and I'm the National Cybersecurity Advisor for Chime. Since I joined Chime last year, we've focused on expanding the exciting community we've created for those working in cybersecurity and IT and healthcare, where we continue to convene, collaborate, share information, learn from each other and from experts in the field so that we can continuously improve the way we deal with this complex technical and threat environment. So Chime's goal today is that we all benefit from the immense knowledge and expertise of our presenters. I'm happy to be your host today, and I also want to note that I'll be joined in my hosting duties by my colleague, Frank Katita, a Vice President for Chime and DHI, who will also moderate a few sessions today as well. As you can see on the next slide, our agenda today is comprised of 3 keynote addresses and 4 content sessions. We'll kick off today's summit with a presentation by Ryan Pardee, Supervisory Special Agent with the FBI, presenting on the cyber threat forecast for 2025 and breach prevention guidelines. Ryan brings extensive experience in counterterrorism, cybercrime, and international investigations to his role leading the San Francisco Cyber Task Force, and has held various positions within the FBI, including managing international cyber operations and supervising counterintelligence investigations. He's also served as an instructor and advisor to international partners, specializing in mitigating threats from actors operating online. Ryan, thanks so much for participating in our event today. I'm excited to hear about the role that the FBI Cyber Division plays in this space and your thoughts on the current threat environment and how the FBI serves as a resource to the healthcare sector. Ryan, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa, for the lovely introduction. I am very excited about the agenda we all have for you today. I'm excited to be able to kind of kick this off for everybody. And although a few topics here I'm just going to touch on, I assure you rather, that you are going to get more than you probably need to on each of these topics as the different speakers come after me and the content sessions. So with that, let's get started. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the FBI. We certainly are hitting the news a lot recently here. We are an entity, a government agency consisting of about 38,000 employees. We cover both a mix of criminal and national security matters. But as our name implies, as the I in FBI stands for investigations, this is really what drives what the FBI does and how we do it. But because we're here today to talk a bit about this realm of information technology security or cybersecurity, if you will, I would be remiss if I didn't mention also that we spend a lot of time working with partners here. And certainly in the cyber realm, a lot of what we do in working with partners has to do with working with the Secret Service, who certainly have their hands full at the beginning of a new administration coming in, but also work hand in hand with us on many cybersecurity investigations, and then another government agency called CISA that works to help fix problems when they are around. Now, all that said, as you heard from my profile, I've also had a lot of experience working overseas in addition to the domestic realm. So with that, we spend a lot of time also working with our partners in these spaces as well, because certainly in today's day and age of cybersecurity, there's almost no such thing as a purely domestic incident. Everything has some type of reach to an overseas element. Next slide, please. So what are we going to focus on here today? So, of course, we're here to talk about the healthcare industry itself. And, although this slide looks a little bit busy, that is the purpose of this slide, to let you know that the FBI is extremely concerned, along with our partnership with HHS, to help issue guidance with the FBI, CISA, and HHS to be able to help responses to incidents, preparation for incidents, and discoveries of incidents. As you see here in a few different snapshots of some cybersecurity advisories that have happened over the last year, it is a very salient issue, and I will get into how important the healthcare industry is particularly for the FBI, as we start to talk about a bit more of this. Next slide, please. So you're going to see a chart here that is all based on reporting that different healthcare entities have made regarding breaches. And when we talk about the word breach, we're talking about hacking incident in modern parlance here. But during the year 2024, here's a brief little chart to show you the distribution of the number of incidents that have happened when we talk about what has been reported to HHS. So that's their Office of Civil Rights responsible for compiling all of this data. And over that period of time in 2024, there were a total of 586 total breaches. And if you were to count the dots up here in this slide, you would find that we're missing two very big breaches, the two biggest breaches that were reported last year. I won't talk about who these particular companies were because I want people to remember that these companies, these healthcare industry entities that are doing the reporting are victims. They are victims of crimes and they have rights to be this way. Even though sometimes the perception gets to be, oh my gosh, they didn't respond in the way they should have, or they've been all these other patient or bits of personal data, PII, affected by this particular breach. Please remember again that these entities that are taking the time to comply with these mandatory reporting requirements are victims of crimes. So with that, we're not focusing on the victims themselves, but understand that there are on this chart, if you look, way up here on the chart itself, there are a couple incidents that were missing. And again, you are welcome to go into HHS and look for the same data yourself and even do your own analysis. But understand my point in putting this up here is of these 586 total breaches that were reported to HHS, there might be some that we're missing. We know we're missing two on purpose, but also understand that even with the most robust type of cybersecurity you have, and whether we're talking about, as the panel discussions will be today, resilience, responses to ransomware, which I'll get into in just a little bit, NIST standards that can help you put yourself in the best position possible, these incidents are usually pretty large scale. The average breach, as you see on this slide, of 307,000 plus affected individuals in each of these instances tells you that these are large instances and it's going to require a lot of resources to respond, a lot of resources to triage. And guess what? We're in the healthcare industry, at least that's who we're talking about and to here. And you all are in the business of being in business. So businesses need to continue. That resiliency and continuity of operations is key to all of this. And having somebody else partially in-house and maybe partially outsourced, helps you get through all these incidents. And certainly it is not something that anybody is in alone. Next slide, please. So who are these people that are trying to get in to all of your IT systems? Well, it really covers a wide variety of different types of what we call cyber actors. So in this realm, you'll see on the one end of the slide, hacktivism on the green end, and then all the way up to warfare on the red end. So what we would normally talk about in this hacktivism realm are people who were, relatively speaking, pretty low threat and pretty unsophisticated. This, of course, has grown over time to go from what might be characterized metaphorically as people spray painting walls or defacing front websites to now those that are doing serious damage and causing serious problems in the resilience realm for companies that are trying to recover from incidents and take this information, doing it for a cause of some kind. Next over is this crime category. And as you'll see in that icon of our cyber criminal holding a bag of money, we usually look to see how a particular group, a threat actor group, is trying to monetize a particular act. And oftentimes, as we'll talk about here, this has to do with ransomware. Now, getting here toward the middle of the spectrum of the insider threat, often a disgruntled employee that might have been terminated under less than favorable circumstances, because this is what we generally see in the FBI, and this is what has happened time and time again for us, might want to cause problems in terms of causing damage or holding data ransom or taking something home with them. In each one of these instances, we have criminal avenues to address this within the FBI through our investigations. As we start to shift over to the other side of the spectrum, when we talk about our national security investigations, we still have lots of opportunities to work with anybody who has been a victim of some type of cyber incident, whether we talk about espionage or terrorism, both of which are of great threats, but all the way over to what we call warfare. And this certainly has a range of actions itself in this warfare category. But what we really want to get to is the idea that nation state actors, and you will have seen plenty of actions conducted by the FBI. If you were to watch 60 Minutes here in recent history, you would have seen our director talk about China having committed a very large scale incident of compromising the telecommunications industry here within the US. But ultimately, we are looking to help you put yourselves in a strong posture to defend as best you can against nation state actors. Next slide, please. So, what are the driving factors? Well, as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about ransomware, these types of actors that perpetrate that, and yes, in today's day and age, these can be nation state actors also, they're looking for monetizing this, and they do this with direct payments from a victim direct to them, as opposed to a nation state actor or another company that might see some type of value to stealing all of your information, your healthcare information, and using this for some type of internal opportunity here. To those that might be more opportunistic, we talk about this small office or home office type of realm. And if you have a very small group of providers that have set up or catered out to a small provider also themselves, their own IT infrastructure, there might not be lots of money to set up a good, robust set of defense. And so occasionally, bits and pieces of your data infrastructure might not be updated on a consistent basis. And thus, it gets to be much easier to compromise companies and groups of people who operate as a business in that fashion. So you look at the bottom half of the slide where we talk about for the FBI and all of our data we collect through the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3 as we call this, that the number one industry victim of all the ransomware comes down to healthcare and public health entities. So again, from our data set within the FBI, and this is based on data from 2023, we are still categorizing and processing the 2024 data since we're just in January of 2025, but we don't anticipate there will be any major seismic shifts of these themes during that point in time. Next slide, please. So I would also be remiss, and I know others are going to get into this also, of what we're seeing right now in terms of the realm of AI, artificial intelligence. Certainly, if you had been able to observe what had happened during the last election cycle, it was a prime case against both major parties of seeing deep fakes, which is somebody creating some type of video or image that was fake, uh, generated often by artificial intelligence, and then often using AI in the video realm to create audio that would mimic the video itself. And it is very easy to create these types of audio samples. And from what I have understood from other AI experts that actually can create these types of videos, it can be as simple as listening to a voicemail of yours and capturing enough audio within that voicemail to clone your voice, at least to a degree enough to perpetrate a scam. Likewise, being able to use AI to enhance the sophistication of the types of attacks that are happening, or the malware that is used to affect these types of attacks, making the attacks faster and more efficient, and certainly more scalable or autonomous in this realm. Now, there are certainly lots of great uses of AI in the realm of business, and whether that falls to healthcare or IT itself that we're all focused on today here in the healthcare realm. Looking at how we use AI to look at data is also something that can be pushed back on us, where nefarious groups that have malicious intentions will use the same capability of AI to look at large scale data and try and make their malware itself bigger and better, and then also process data and collect more data that is either publicly available or once they get into a network itself to help them better. And certainly our big concerns here as well would extend to their ability to gather information on military technology, but certainly, as we talked about in this last election cycle, sowing disinformation, which now that we're out of an election cycle, the opportunity to be able to use this and leverage this for malicious cyber actors against large corporations to mimic what a CEO or CTO or CIO or CISO is able to put out as public information and pretend to be that same person to sow this disinformation and utilize this to, generally speaking, gain some type of opportunity for the malicious actors is certainly a realm that we're trying to prepare ourselves for. Next slide, please. So you will hear details about how to go into many of these steps over and over again, but certainly what is at the heart of what we're extremely concerned about and want to prepare everybody for is the idea we need to combat this all together. Chime, who has a number of presenters, who has a co-host here with this particular seminar, puts itself in a very great position to talk about some of this stuff and help facilitate sharing. And you'll hear also from some of the other presenters as to what the considerations are for setting yourselves up for how to implement some of these realms. But understand social engineering, where malicious cyber actors want to compromise anybody's personal willingness to help them in some way, shape, or form, is at the heart of what we do and what we do in terms of preparing to defend ourselves and others in the FBI against these malicious types of attacks. And we do this by, number one, education. We do this through cooperation and information sharing, as you see later down in this slide. Now, MFA, that next acronym you see down there, stands for multi-factor authentication. And certainly a good proportion of the breaches that we talked about that are reported to HHS could have been helped by multi-factor authentication. And if you don't know what MFA is, it's just effectively finding a second way to lock your front door. You might lock the small handle on one end and then you might deadbolt it. And so in the cyber realm, we want to not only have that handle open that you need to operate, but then a deadbolt where you need to have some type of hopefully different key. And doing that, providing two opportunities to stop the bad guy, is really what helps us a lot. So you have a password and then a code that might be sent to your phone via SMS, or a little key that, like a code that changes on a regular basis. We talk to companies and corporations about having some mechanism for managing updates and patches. As you'll hear later on, the idea of how you set yourself up for success to survive attacks through resilience is going to be a key topic of today a couple times over. Chime is here also, again, because one of the many things they do well is help share information. And we do this also, as we showed you in the second slide, of sharing information. Some of this information is publicly available. Some of it is available only to trusted individuals. So when you get together with industry groups or you participate in something like InfraGard, which is a FBI participated in group, infraguard.org, but a nonprofit run by outside the FBI, where we have mechanisms for sharing what we call IOCs, or indicators of compromise, or little details to help those that can help make changes on a network or help push for changes on a network to help adjust your posture to help defend against known threats. And then the last thing I would mention on here is ic3.gov and what is the, as I mentioned earlier, Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is a location you can go, or whomever within your company can go, to report a breach in addition to HHS. And a good reason why you go there in addition to HHS, because it's yet one more government agency to send information to, is, again, another acronym for you, FFKC, the Financial Fraud Kill Chain. Now, I know Booz Allen, who's going to be on here later, is very familiar with the Financial Fraud Kill Chain. We have many folks we work with from Booz Allen Hamilton. But ultimately, what this means to you, as those of you who are listening in, is when you contact the FBI through ic3.gov and you report a breach, we have the opportunity to reach out to the financial institutions very quickly and very successfully, most importantly to you, to help freeze money in its place. So if you have been a victim of what we see down here, a phishing attack where you've accidentally clicked on a link, or somebody within your company, your business has clicked on a link, you have the opportunity to stop money if money has been sent as a result of that, or if somebody has faked an invoice, to be able to send that link. I'm sorry, to be able to stop sending that money to wherever it's going next. Next slide, please. So with all of that, I wanted to make sure that we took some time for questions here. I know we got done just a little bit earlier than anticipated, a lot because I've been set up very well for the rest of today with my first talk here, since almost all of these things that I've mentioned during my initial address here will be talked about at some point in time. And certainly the FBI is extremely interested in helping those that have been victims of crimes, helping to investigate what has happened to you. But ultimately, the theme of the day that I want you to drive home from the FBI's perspective is plan. Plan on all of these things eventually happening. Plan on potentially there being a cyber incident at some point in time in the life cycle of the company that you manage, you work for, and we all have a role to play here. And at what point in time you contact the FBI, at what point in time you report this to HHS, I know needs to be a deliberate decision. And we are also in the FBI very willing to take informal calls of, hey, look, we don't know what we have quite yet. We need some time to figure out what we have, but we might have been a victim of something. We are not HHS. I am not also a legal advisor to tell you when HHS's mandatory breach notifications take place. I encourage you to talk to your own counsels to know that. I am just here as the FBI to tell you, I suggest you form some type of relationship with the FBI at some point in time, and this seems like a pretty good group to suggest to make that relationship, because we do want to work with you and we do want to share as much information as we can when you have been a victim of a crime.
So Ryan, this is Lisa. Again, in the area of planning. So it's okay for an organization to contact their local or regional cyber group at the FBI and proactively talk to them before anything happens, right? And you encourage that.
Absolutely. And whether it's something as simple as, hey, look, we're having an all employee meeting today. Can you please send a speaker over? Or it is a
Right.
board meeting and you need to drive home. Hey, look, what has the FBI seen recently in this ransomware realm? We certainly invite either of those, and doing so through your local FBI office. Again, pitch for the website, fbi.gov, gets you to be able to put in a request to have a speaker from the FBI at wherever it is you want to have a speaker.
Okay, so in following that up, we have a question from an attendee. What services are offered by the FBI and other government agencies to organizations to help with resiliency and things like tabletops, indicators of compromise, et cetera?
Absolutely. Great question. And with the indicators of compromise in particular, we try and find ways to forge these relationships early so we can share the IOCs once we have one victim, to hopefully prevent other people from being victims. We hope to be able to share, when we have them with trusted partners, keys to ransomware when we know we have them, if they aren't individual to a particular incident or a victim. So using those platforms are good. And then flipping to what you asked about first, TTXs, tabletop exercises. We participate in these things on a very regular basis. We will work with our partners at CISA. They sometimes have some pre-packaged depending upon how you want to do this.
Great. Another question from an attendee. Are there positives and negatives for a company to enact mobile device and application management across the organization? And how do you best explain that to employees and convince them it's an important security measure that's, it's important, but won't violate their privacy in some way?
Yeah, that is a tough one. I mean, even by virtue of the FBI participating in here, sometimes people, the same way that when you look in your rearview mirror, you see red and blue lights, it raises your anxiety. Having somebody own your device in some way, shape, or form to install some type of endpoint security is certainly a concerning element, in something that has to be managed. And in my experience, the best way to do this is as transparently as possible in explaining these risks. your PII is more likely to be compromised if we don't put this in there, and then your information will be exposed. I know many providers inherently have to put some of their information out there, but then in this realm, you lose control of that, and it's no longer about your licensing. It's now about you, your person, and you, the family, losing control of all this information.
Okay. Another question, I hear this one all the time. How important do you feel it is to do patching for vulnerabilities? And what percentage of entities do you see that are actually keeping up with it? I have
Uh,
my own answer to this, but I can't wait to hear yours.
no, it's also a very great
Oh,
question. I think the key to this is patch management. And I've never seen any entity in my entire life who is up to speed on every single patch there is. There's good reasons for this. There are risks involved with patching today and tomorrow. Uh, how you manage that, how you prioritize that, I think is key. Is there a perfect answer? No, other than being very cogitative, thinking about all this and having a plan in place for how you prioritize this. Because at the end of the day, this is about managing the risk. We never mitigate it, but we manage it. We mitigate the threats when we see them, but the risk itself will always be there.
okay. Another question from me. I know that you mentioned CISA as one of your federal partners, but can you talk a little bit about all of the other federal partners you have and how you
Yeah.
work together with them, and how we on the receiving end can sort of get a handle on all of that and make best use of it?
Absolutely. And certainly there are a number of government agencies or departments all kind of involved in this. We in the FBI often co-brand with the Department of Homeland Security. That's where Secret Service sits underneath, in an effort to again ensure we are hitting critical infrastructure in a positive way to help as much as we can, forging relationships with these different partners so we understand what is important in what is happening, because certainly more so in the cyber realm than any other realm in which the FBI or the Secret Service operates, we need our partnerships, because large corporations are very often the biggest victims of all this because they hold the most data. And if you are a malicious actor, this is where you get the most money out of what you're trying to do through an intrusion. So DHS is one partner in co-branding things, and this is also where CISA sits. So we work to investigate, CISA works to help fix or prepare. Now, within the spectrum here, an anecdote for you. What does the NSA and the CIA really do in this? Well, other than
Right.
listening to everybody else's conversations, kind of like the FBI do, uh, in all seriousness, the CIA has a very foreign focus, as does the NSA. And you would find this based on statute, that they're there to go work primarily in an overseas mission. The NSA is amazing and fantastic. We, of course, can never talk about what the heck it is the NSA does to anybody. Um, but you might see occasionally from us, hey, look, we have a lead right now. You have become a victim of something. And this is going to be where you start to look at me with glazed eyes and say, why are you even going to tell me this? Because your information, Ryan, from the FBI doesn't tell me anything. Uh, and I can't tell you anything about it. Well, wink, wink, nod, nod. This might come from other agencies, and I can't talk about this. It's not my information. It's not theirs. It is great, though, to hear that we continue to try and push the boundaries of this. We have brought in CISOs several times over to brief people on classified information to give you a better idea of what that landscape looks like. But of course, we have to do this in a very measured fashion. So that gives you at least a little flavor of some of the different realms here. There are many other government agencies out there, but those are our primary cooperating elements.
And do you work with the sort of government industry collaborations like the Health Sector Coordinating Council, the Health ISAC, groups like that in the different sectors as well as healthcare?
Yeah, and ISAC is a great mention there also. OSAC, DSAC, ISAC, these are all very critical elements to us. And we spend probably more time going out and trying to forge these relationships as often as we can with those that sit in this realm of healthcare, because critical infrastructure is defined by us, or includes for us, healthcare certainly is one of its top realms.
We have one final question before we wrap up here from a participant. When is it a good idea to provide your staff with a company provided mobile device as opposed to personal?
Again, there are a couple of factors to this. The biggest of which, from my perspective, because you're asking me, is all about risk management. But I would also assume there's probably a very strong element to this that's either that could potentially be raising morale, could potentially also be affecting efficiency. But with all this comes risk, right? And how we manage that risk, I think, is key to every bit of this, and doing so in as transparent a process as possible. You hear a lot of folks bring your own device. BYOD is something that they don't want to deal with, but they have to deal with. In today's day and age, sometimes it's an easy force multiplier. But again, for the person who has that device, what comes along with that, educating them on what that risk actually looks like in real life, I think goes a long ways in helping, but not limiting risk.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan, for participating in our event today. Very helpful, very useful, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you all so very much for allowing me to be here. And certainly, please, anytime anybody wants to, you can contact your local FBI office and hit up a duty agent. We are on staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're there to help people.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you so much.